what is the first thing the West did? They went and they took the gold.
Yeah. I don't know if you recall the drip return of Germany's gold. And then the Dutch had also requested their gold back, but they did it far more subtly
I
behind
do
closed
remember that.
doors. And they got settled
I
in
wrote about.
gold after the seizure of Ukraine's gold in the
Mention
the
that.
post-Maidan events. So it's amazing how it didn't come from Fort Knox or whatever we think we believe is in there. It came from other people's
Let me
metals, and it
comment
was
on that.
done. And
Yeah, let
go
me
ahead.
comment on that because I did write several articles back at that time. I think it was what 2013 or 14 when
14,
Germany
14 was
requested
Maidan.
300 tons of gold, and it was only 300 tons of gold. It was not a huge amount. And immediately the U.S. came out and said, or they jointly came out and said, well, it's going to take some time, 3 or 4 years, because we just can't ship that much gold that quickly. It's too dangerous, blah, blah, blah. Well, I actually researched it, and I think the number, and this is off the top of my head now because it's been so long ago, I think it would have taken four 747 jumbo cargo planes to move the 300 tons because I think the max capacity is like 95 tons or 97 tons on a and my numbers may be off, but I think I came
Yeah,
up with it would have taken four flights to do it, and it took I think until 2016 or 17 for the remainder for the final uh, gold to arrive to Germany. And the interesting thing is, it was not German gold. It did not bear the serial numbers that were delivered originally. And I guess, people think, well, gold is gold is gold. And I think that's really not a good way to think because
no.
let's put it this way. Let's put, if you,
Try do
if
that with
you go,
firearms. Phil. Try do that with
pardon
firearms
me,
and have the wrong serial number. I say try do that with
right,
firearms. It's a gun, it's a
right,
gun,
right.
it's a gun. It's not. It's
Well,
absolutely not right.
it, if you think about it from a personal standpoint, you go out and you buy some gold. And this happened to me. I'm not going to say what company it was. I will say it was on the East Coast, a big depository on the East Coast. You could probably infer from that. I bought a bunch of 2001 uh, 1/10 ounce coins back then. I mean, gold was what, 270 an ounce. So the premium was not, I was looking for small rather than premium or rather than the cheapest coin. So I bought 2001 coins. I held them in storage for five, almost 5 full years. The second half of 2006, I was preparing to leave the country. I retired the very beginning of November, and I wanted to ship that metal uh, to Switzerland. I wanted to get everything out of the United States at the time. Well, it turns out that the metal that was shipped were 2005 coins. They were not 2001 coins. And I was paying for segregated storage. So I'm thinking to myself, well, what happened to it? You could pretty much guess what happened to it. It got rehypothecated, just like everything else is rehypothecated 10 times over. So I asked for my metal before the music stopped, and Germany asked for their metal before the music stopped. The point I'm trying to make is the music's going to stop, and you're not going to have it unless it is truly segregated. And you need to uh, do research if you're going to vault your metal. Do research, uh, and I would say make sure that you vault with a company that does no pooling whatsoever. That way, you can be fairly safe in thinking that your metal's not being lent out.
Yeah, I've got to
And
say, I
one other
100%
thing,
agree.
one other thing, just as an example, and I've used this example because we've been talking about the great taking now for 2 or 3 months. What kind of business model could work with in the brokerage industry where they're charging you $7.95 per trade, whether it's $1,000 trade, $100,000 trade, or $100 million trade? What business model could possibly work? How could you do enough trades at 795 for these people to fly around in private jets, limousines, et cetera, et cetera? That's not how they make their money. The way they make their money is you deposit your stock and they turn around and lend it out and they earn the interest on it. That's the business model. So if you think that, first off, if you think that you deposit $10,000 into your bank and they squirrel it away in the vault in the back, you're wrong. A matter of fact, what was it when COVID started? I think the banks were allowed to go zero reserves, so they didn't have to have any reserves. So I mean, that's two industries right there. You've got the brokers and you've got the banks, where they're able to rehypothecate as much as they want.
I I I want to summarize what you're saying. We live in a fractional reserve system where there is no such thing as your money. There was something pooled. There's a debit enter and a promise. And actually, the banking system, the model of that banking system in all major endeavors has been replicated. You have a fractional reserve gold system. The fact that you can't get your
Correct.
specific gold and that you were paying storage on something that they weren't even holding for you. They'll say we'll get it just before when he asks for it. We'll buy a week and says, oh, it's going to take some time and we'll get it in then. So you were probably paying rent on a space you didn't need him to rent, because they didn't have it. They had it out somewhere else. And the same thieves are perpetuating the same model in a multitude of anything. In terms of your share certificates, on the great taking, there's a pool of equities, and they've put it all out, they've lent it all out, they've done what they want with it. They don't have what you have, and it's quickly get it when he asks for it. Most people, most of the time, aren't asking it. And it takes us back to the blacksmith and the original home of money, where fractional reserving actually started. That's the trick.
Yeah.
The And it's in every industry now. It's not just our financial system. And another reason why it's time to start asking for things and demanding them physically. And it's only because of your move. You may have the same game played with you in Switzerland. It might be time to ask for it to live at home again, if that's where you're going to see everything out. I'm trying to see what lessons, how do we troubleshoot in this great game of unfolding so that we are not 100% victim in this event that we were scenario casting, which you quite correctly, with the results of derivatives and the scale of everything, it'll be grid down, it'll be locked down. Hey, financial system, logger jammed, everybody's bust, blah, 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 blah. This has happened. I think they'll scapegoat someone as a hack, but we all know they need this event, regardless if there was one, and that will be the war narrative to justify a bit of population neutering. And you've just got to make sure you're as far away from the war as possible. You're as limited digitized as possible, and you have as much physical wealth in physical items as possible. You're as self-reliant as possible. You have your own water, your own solar panels, and you're close to your local farmer where you have a share in the farm, ideally. And a third of his sheep are named yours. You're going to get a good price for them, and take silver and gold as currency in teaspoons or silverware, or as you choose, and load up like a gent, because and arm up like a gent to protect your position, especially if it's known that you've done that. Uh, what would you add to anything else you would add to that or change?
Uh, we could probably talk for. I wouldn't delete anything that you just mentioned. I think the easiest way to describe what you listed out is you want as few counterparties as possible in every aspect of your life. You want to rely on other people,
Local.
other counterparties as little
Mm,
as possible. You want to be as self-sufficient as you possibly can. I think that's the big, the
yeah.
summary of it.
And people don't understand that counterpartying is everywhere. They all go, well, I'm with Goldman Sachs. They'll
Everywhere.
never be allowed to go down. Or I'm with so and so. No, haircuts all around in everything. They're all tied to each other. It's like a long string of miners and the fat bloke climbers, and the fat bloke falls. Everybody's going down who's tied to him. You're all going down that cliff face. It's too big. He's falling too hard. You're all getting pulled out. Doesn't matter what you knocked in the wall on the way up, the rope snapping. It's that big a deal. It's such a calamity. And that's going to be disinflation. And in those moments, shares won't be worth that much. But at least if you have your certificates, they will probably recover as shares in businesses, and they'll probably continue to function, providing they haven't lost power, or they'll be started back up after the shock and awe problem phase before, and the reaction is playing out. But expect social unrest, expect looting, because they'll even pay them to do that so that they can implement a martial law to control you and lock you down again. Only this time it will be a different narrative, I think. Yeah, I don't know what
You,
further to
you
say. It's
sound you sound just like me. You sound crazy. 5, 10 years ago, we were crazy. Now it's pretty obvious, and if it's not obvious, then you're not paying attention. I would ask a question. Uh, what happens? The thought process for, well, since World War II is that the risk-free asset on the planet Earth was U.S. Treasury bonds, and I think the questioning of the solvency, the questioning of or even the morals, I guess you could say, the judicial system, et cetera, in the United States, the questioning of treasuries is going to lead people to ask that question. Well, you know, why are treasuries really risk free? And the more someone digs, the more they're going to find out the only risk free asset on the planet is gold and silver.
in your hand.
As
Yeah.
far as Right. Uh, so I think that's where this is headed. Now, whether we get there before or after the crash, I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if that contributed to the crash. People figuring out, hey, wait a minute, the U.S. is a deadbeat in every facet, in every way,
Yeah.
financially, militarily, morally, judicially. Uh, the U.S. is not even a shadow of its former self.
I did an entrepreneurial MBA, and we were taught the risk-free rate, the hurdle rate that all businesses had to surpass that were taking risk was the 10-year T-bill. And of course,
Right.
this was because they'll never go bad on you. And of course, that's an absolute fallacy. And I love your a gold bar in their hand is the only thing that's risk-free, and a gun to protect it, maybe. Do you know, Bill, there was a yield curve inversion that reverted positive recently, and that was
Right.
the 30s and twos. So I was explaining the yield curve inversion. Forgive me, I'll do just a short explainer. Vic, I know you know this, but just for the audience, yield curve inversion being long-term debt having the shorter term debt rates deducted from it, and that differential, normal markets upward sloping, the longer out you go, the higher it should be because you're compounding in an inflationary environment. And that's the expectation. When a crisis starts to rear its head, you get inversion where the short rates are paying a higher yield than the longer term. That is scared, a fear, a bigger bid under long term debt, a calming down. And the real hit always comes back on the reversion back through the zero. Typically, it's a leading indicator, and I hate lagging indicators. So many things in technical analysis are lagging indicators on the charts. I don't use any mathematical formulas or moving averages or MACDs. This is an economic leading indicator that highlights the panic, and it's actually the normalization and the reversion back, and the first of many popular traded up through. And that's why I think we've also seen this rush of activity by the Fed, because they will be an observer. They know it's 100% indicator. Literally, every major crisis has been called by the reverting back to zero of the yield curve. I want to, as a lot of people will be watching this video, I want to put them all on notice. We've transitioned from that amber light to the red light. It's imminent now. The train is coming. You know, the boom is going to come down. You're going to get trapped in a space you don't want to be in. Do you agree? Anything you would add? What's your take?
Oh, I would just say, as a student of history, uh, every single recession in the United States since the Depression had one thing ahead of that, and that was an inverted yield curve. Now, having an inverted yield curve does not guarantee a recession, but every recession that's ever occurred always had an inverted yield curve ahead of time. So it's a serious warning sign. Uh, and I've got to say, and I hate saying this because when you hear this time it's different or this time it might be different, this time it might be different just from the standpoint of this is not a cyclical move. This is a secular move. This is the end of an empire. So, will classical relationships continue? It's hard to say whether, what has always been throughout history when there was not the uh, possibility, probability, or mathematical certainty that the financial system will end because it can't continue. Uh, this is a secular event. It's not a cyclical event. Cyclical event happens every 4 years, 5 years, whatever, 10 years.
Yeah,
A secular event, you're talking about things like the French Revolution. You're talking about
yeah,
things like the Bolshevik Revolution. You're talking about World War II. The fall of
yeah,
Rome, that was a secular event. The fall of the United States, that's a secular event, but it's the biggest secular event in all of history because it will affect more people, more land mass than anything ever before. And I mean, if the US goes down, how many central banks have 50, 60, 70, 95% of their reserves in dollars? So when the
yeah.
dollar finally gets smoked, how many other foreign central banks are completely smoked and have nothing but a black hole of worthless dollars on their balance sheet?
Yeah, I think I was going to add it's the biggest inversion that's taken place in the modern area in the last 40 years. There was, the 30s was interesting and bigger, and the curves were quite different back then. But against any of the other crises, it's also the longest one. This 30 and 2 has been a year, 6 months, and 10 days before it finally broke above zero, and the others are yet to. So it's the first of many. But once the leader does, the others can squirt up very, very quickly and usually do. So we've had the first shoe drop on timing because the frustration I always get is people think we clairvoyants, people like you and I, Bill, they say, when's it happening? You know, as if you say, okay, let me just check my calendar. It's going to be 3:30 on the 24th of March. No, but we can tell you the stages are going through. It's like firing a gun, you know.
Right.
For
Exactly.
safety you hold your fingers outside the triggering zone, but this gun is in the shoulder, it's cocked, there's a round in the chamber, and the fingers have left and they've moved inside the trigger guard and they're on the trigger now. Now I still can't tell you
Correct.
when he pulls that trigger, but boy, he's getting real close now. The next
Right.
stage is the round coming down real quick at you. And that's kind of how I tend to have to deal with it, because people, as I say, if you've got a little bit of insight, they expect you to be a clairvoyant. Um, but that's a real biggie. And like you say, the other thing is the interoperability and the cross holdings is now a global village of lepers. It's a synchronized mainstream media. As I was mentioning, we were discussing just before we went live with the whole military mayhem and narrative all uniformed. You know, there's those clips that go around with all the TVs where they're all saying the same word speak. This is exactly that. When you're getting Australia saying we're in threat of Russia and we don't have enough soldiers, you're talking about an island on the other side of, the planet that are now saying fear the great Russian bear. We really need to get ready. This is all scripted. And the financial system of the particularly the Western access, but the general one, because they're still crossing over with the BRICS and trade is still global to a fair degree, despite the bifurcation, is even more reliant on it. And it's ring a rosies, a pocket full of posies. We all fall down. We all fall down. You can't stand up no matter how strong you are. As I say, it's like being the only climber who knocked a peg in the rock, but you've got six other climbers that are all ahead of you that are all toppled over and throwing it down the cliff. You're wrecked
Right.
by virtue of association. And you're not a doomsayer, and you're not wrong in saying it's different. I go again to the probability of the event. It's very highly likely. It's almost impossible for me to see it not happening, short of an asteroid strike. And it's very highly likely to be exceedingly big. And this makes us seem, as the light's going down and I'm disappearing into the dark here, a bit like a doom scroller. But I've absolutely, how else do you go, listen, we should get away lightly here. It's going to be a soft landing. How else do you credibly make a case for that? Is it even possible?
Yeah. You can't make a case for that. And let me just say one thing as far as timing. You're absolutely right. No one has a crystal ball. Nobody has a calendar. But I will say, remember, this year is an election year in the United
Yes,
States, November. So I have been a proponent for a long time saying that once this got terminal, they would have to kick the table over because there's been too many illegal things have been done. And
yes,
that leads me to the election coming up. If the powers that be believe that they will not be able to cheat enough to keep the people that are in office now in office, if they think there's going to be a groundswell of pissed off voters and there's no way to cheat enough to prevent the turnover, I believe they will be so afraid of the ramifications, the potential jail terms, etc., uh, that we won't have an election. They will kick this thing over prior to the election.
yeah,
And
yeah.
who knows how they'll do it or what they'll use as the spark. But it doesn't really matter. The table's kicked over.
100%. I totally agree with that. It's almost like the Obama Putin chess versus checkers thing. The only way once you realize you've been snookered on both games, is to smash it over the pieces. Uh, Interestingly enough, you get the crypto crowd, and I just want to make a comment for them. It's absolutely telling. Yes, okay, Bitcoin, you can have that, and I would potentially hold a little bit of it, maybe, if speculative, if you want to. But you're going to be power dependent, you're going to be grid dependent, you're going to be internet dependent. It's not going to be the thing that necessarily saves you, although it can be revived once that stuff comes back on. But the USDT, all the tethers and dollar equivalents that are on the blockchain reverted recently, instead of holding Bitcoin and other tokens as collateral, which was super volatile, recently to treasuries and became a useful buyer. And I think that's why we've had the likes of Bitfinex actually get left alone, because they were being harassed a lot previously when they were offering a stable coin. The guys behind Bitfinex Exchange were involved with that. Your stable coin will fail in the blockchain environment if it has collateral, which it does, based in the real world digitized financial system. In other words, it will become an asset based entirely on faith and will not be backed meaningfully. And it will be your choice if you choose to take it, because the intrinsic value could again be 0 or 0.1. And that will have effect for all those trapped in Bitcoin. In short, those that think they've created a totally independent, separate bubble and a separate universe of existence are living in a delusion. Right or wrong, Bill?
I would just ask this question. I think you're right as far as it's a bubble. It's a bubble that's speculated on nothing. I mean, my opinion is cryptocurrencies are digital air. When the system goes down, you'll find out that they're worth zero. One of the beauties of crypto years ago was the supposedly it was anonymous. And I would just
Yeah,
ask you, who's the largest Bitcoin holder in the world? It's the United States, the United States Treasury. And how is
yeah.
that? Through confiscation. They've confiscated, from drug dealers, whatever, through court cases. They've confiscated Bitcoin, and I believe they are the biggest Bitcoin holder in the world. So if if they can, and I don't know whether Pablo Escobar or not had Bitcoin, but I'm trying to make an analogy. If they can confiscate Bitcoin from Pablo Escobar, why
Mm.
do you think they can't confiscate your Bitcoin
Especially if it
or
can be
any other?
seen, tracked, and monitored, and is not
Correct. Exactly.
proprietary. Yeah, it's open source
Exactly.
banking.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a warning in there for the crypto people that think they've got their better than gold special solution for our times. In actual fact, the surveillance and the power is very much being enacted through your device, through your internet, through your telephone line, through all communication systems that are part of a surveillance network. And in actual fact, you don't want to be part of that. You don't want to be part of that. You want to be physical at the moment they're pushing everything digital. If you don't hold it, the 9/10 of the law rule applies. It's not yours. And if you can't protect it, it won't stay yours. And I think that's, it's got to be the baseline for everybody. How much of your wealth do you physically hold under your direct control without counterparty risk? And how much of it are you prepared to protect in an environment where social disruption, military enlistment, all forms of martial law potential, like proxies, whether it be health, climate, hack, or any other story. They seem to have prepared a few. And by the way, Bill, there's a drill going on with NATO that's taking place. I think
Right.
it's starting not too soon until May. And there's an uncanny tendency for large scale, well set up drills to go live as well, especially given this recent MSM surge that they've been doing. They've not done much on the justification. They just say, we don't have the troops, we should do more, there has to be a war. They haven't described what winning is. What, bombing Moscow, only taking over the country and putting a puppet government in? You think you're going to do that? They haven't determined that. They haven't determined what cost it will come with, how much debt it will create. This is the final crescendo to crush the debt system. And they haven't quantified any aspect of what wins, what price in bodies, lives, and money it would be. It's just like we've got to start this bottomless pit. And it's unerring. So I'm with you on the 2024 being the year. It's 4-year QE cycle, quantitative easing and quantitative tightening. It's a 4-year Bitcoin halvening cycle that relies on easing to actually pump the Bitcoin money up. And it is a 4-year presidency cycle. And they love doing things on the cusp of the baton being handed over from previous to new, because the old guy can say, listen, I was winding down, it's not really me anymore. The new guy said it didn't happen on my shift. It's kind of ideal. That's if elections take place. So yeah, the 4-year cycle, is 2024 the year? It sounds like both of us are saying yes.
I think so.
Yeah. And do you have a special preference for, let's look into our Christmas ball. Everybody asks us, when's it going to happen, guys? Given the drills, the NATO, the possible go live event, is it going to be I think there's a quite realistic chance it could be H1 of this year. And March is going to be a troublesome period, especially if that repo
Yeah.
money goes away. I think you get the repo banking problems coming back if they don't do bank, because the banks aren't going to lend to each other overnight. They don't trust each other.
Right.
They're only happy when the Fed's in there playing the game. Then they're happy to lend to everyone because everyone's got a proxy backer. The minute the Fed pulls back a scheme, what do you think is going to happen between now and March 11th? Are they going to get high on the hog now and try stockpile, or are they going to start tapering their reliance on it? I'm not too sure, but all I know is very soon after March the 11th, I'm expecting repo banking problems and people looking at each other like they don't trust each other, sort of Mexican standoff on the overnight lending.
Yeah, I wouldn't even want to speculate on what exactly it is that's the spark, and I wouldn't want to speculate when the spark is. I mean, Francis, the whole thing could blow up before you get this interview posted. Who knows?
Yeah,
All I
yeah,
know is from a mathematical standpoint, the Western financial system is the Western banking system, the Western monetary system is completely toast. So when it goes and what causes it, I wouldn't even try to speculate.
yeah. But the probability is 100%, and we both like 2024 with all the events.
No, I won't say the probability is 100% in 2024, but I will say
No, no,
that mathematically,
100%. But we, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Mathematically, I
mathematically,
meant that. Yeah,
yeah, mathematically, the system is untenable. The system will come down. Uh, if you live 5 years, 10 years, I think it's it's a certainty. I can't say that because you've got time involved, but I can tell you that future generations will look back and see absolutely positively 100%. They'll look back and see a different system that did implode, and people are going to look back and wonder, how was anyone so stupid to have participated in a system like that?
yeah, 100%. 100% agree. Jim, it's been excellent. Bill, sorry, it's been excellent talking to you. I love the way you've put it out and laid it out. It's straight talking. It's useful metaphors. We've kind of summarized the plan we think people should take on a non-advisory basis. We're not financial advisors. Any parting shots that you would like to give as a message for people before you tell everyone how they can engage with you?
I would just say do the best you can. I mean, everyone has different abilities. Some are doers, some are thinkers. Uh, just do the best you can with what you have. And I mean, you're the only one who knows whether you're doing the best you can or not. So, when this thing goes down, if you didn't do the best you can, then yeah, you can blame yourself, kick yourself in the ass. But if you did the best you can, I guarantee you, myself, and everyone will have forgotten something, will have missed something. And don't kick yourself in the ass because, oh, I forgot to do this or I forgot to do that. Just do the best you can and put your head down and go forward. And just understand that you're gonna miss you're going to miss some aspects. There's no question about it. So, just do the best you can. Get yourself right mentally, physically, spiritually. Um, be happy with yourself and do the best you can.
I love that, and I think it's practical and simple. Be in high health. Make sure you're physically strong. It's a great way of ensuring mentally also. It's a psyop, isn't it, Bill? This whole process. We've been chosen to run an obstacle course, one of the biggest and baddest ever, with almost the most testing obstacles, I think. And you've been chosen to
Right.
do this because you can. It's actually a special privilege in a weird, weird way. So make sure you're ready for it. Many people don't know they're going to be asked to run a marathon. They're overweight. They're sitting drinking beer at the start line, and they're not watching. They're watching the TV, but they're going to be made to run. The others have trained, are fit and ready. Again, a metaphor, but you won't be perfectly ready. It's going to be a big one. And you might have to gut some moments out, but you're going to be a whole bunch better for even starting preparation than if you don't do anything at all. And mentally, the support that gives you, thinking you're building something towards an end, and do it for families and give advice to friends, is going to be absolute medicine. Be a leader, a local leader. Get localized with your local support chains, farmers, for food supply, maybe make some tactical investments even so that you're small shareholding, maybe have a community militia that has a shareholding in a farm and also discusses, arm related incidents, becomes close to your police. All these things are going to be real practical things from a prepper sense. Bill, that's awesome. It's super good. BillHolter.com is the website. You have a newsletter, some details for those watching that would like to engage further with you.
Yeah, if you want to reach me, you can go to billholter.com. There is a contact icon there. I did recently change my business address. You can reach me directly at BHOLTER at proton.me.
Great. So for contacting you there and the rest, there's also contacts from the website. Bill does a great newsletter highlighting key charts, visual as well as textual, of how you're actually being proliferated away and why inevitably gold has to be, and silver, a big part of your defense in terms of balance sheet and financial. Jim, Bill, sorry, apologies for doing that. I want to thank you so much for coming on, and it's been absolutely awesome, and thank you for your time.
My pleasure, Francis. Thanks for having me.